This is Zero Mark with a commentary on the new War in the Wasteland event that's coming out this weekend for Legendary Game of Heroes. We're going to look at the event deck and then talk a little bit about some of the changes they made to this event. This event deck is a bit confusing, and I'll explain why in a bit. So to find the event deck, I always go to the Event Collection tab and then scroll down to find the 3 event cards here. So I'll start with a support card, which is kind of Mutant Marauder. This card is a clone of a lot of cards that we've seen before. It creates 2 dark gems both now and for the next 2 turns, plus 1 additional dark gem per 20 honored intensity. So this is a card that by the time you get 200, 300 intensity would fill the whole screen with dark gems effectively every turn, because it does it now and for 2 turns, but then after 3 turns you can fire it off again. So effectively every turn this can fill the screen up with a whole bunch of dark gems, especially if you have 2 of them. So early on, before you've built up intensity, having 2 of them will give you a huge stash of dark gems every turn to fire things off. It also has the passive that it increases honored intensity by 5 per turn. So having a couple of these guys in your deck can give you a lot of dark gems to do stuff with very, very quickly. So this is a standard card. The only thing that's been added is that there's this passive that every turn you heal for 5% of the missing HP. So you do get heal effect every turn with this card. So having a couple of these in your deck will probably be a pretty good choice. The event card, the pink mohawk person, Engineer Exenka. This is the card that's kind of got this new Sure Sight Blast. It's got this charge, store up damage feature, that this is the first time they've used this. So the passive Sure Sight charge, every time the hero does damage, store 75%. On this one, the 6-star, it's 100% of the damage done, and once 3 attacks are stored, no additional damage will be stored. And then when you use the skill, it shoots off and does all of the damage. So the way I read this is that you do 3 attacks over 3 turns. Each turn you attack and it builds up and stores all that extra damage, and then you do a kind of nuke attack on that on the 4th turn that does all the damage that you've done on the previous 3 turns again, and then you can start right away on that turn again with the attack on that 4th turn is the first charge up towards the next one. So essentially every 3 turns you're doubling the damage that you've done. You do damage 3 turns in a row, add all that damage up, and then on the 4th turn you do all that damage again combined on 1 attack, 100% of damage done. That seemed to me to be kind of weak, to not be that powerful, depending on how well you're going to be able to do 3 attacks in a row that generate a lot of damage. But then I saw the video that Network posted, and I'll show you that in a bit and explain what's going on. So that seemed underpowered to me, but we'll see what actually happened. The ultra rare in this event is Wasteland Spectre. This card is kind of amazing. Create 2 Dark Power Gem 4s, both now and for the next 1 turn. So that means 2 turns of Dark Power Gem 4s, plus 1 additional turn per 125 honored intensity. At the 6 starts per 100 honored intensity, to a max of 5 turns. So if you have 300 honored intensity, when you fire off this skill, you'll create 2 Power Gem 4s every turn for 5 turns. And with a 2-turn cooldown, that means that you can have 3 of these active at once. So first turn, you create 2 Power Gem 2s. The second turn, you create 2 Power Gem 2s. The third turn, you create 2, but then you can fire off the skill again. So you've created 2, plus you do 2 more. And the next turn, you do 4. And the 5th turn, you do 4, plus you can fire it off again. And so you end up generating 6 Power Gem 4s per turn for the remainder of the battle. After you've built up 300 honored intensity. That's a pretty good skill. I mean, 6 Power Gem 4s is kind of crazy. If you put 3 of these guys in your team, you would have 18 Power Gem 4s being created every turn. That's a lot, and that would be doing a lot of damage. But only for longer term battles. This is not going to be something that's going to give you something great on turn 2. So not a good Slayer deck, but it's a commander deck, so it doesn't need to be good for Slayer. The X13, as always, is just an upgraded version of one of the 3 event cards. In this case, it is the upgrade of the actual event card, which has this this damage storage thing, and now instead of storing 100% of damage, it's storing 150% of damage. Also, this one has this new leader skill that heroes and relics that passively generate Dren, Honored, or Human Intensity generate 20% more. So that means that if you have this guy as your leader, your support cards, instead of generating 5 intensity per turn, are going to be generating 6 intensity per turn. And if you have a relic that generates 5 intensity per turn, it's going to be generating 6 intensity per turn. So by the time you add that stuff all up, you could be getting a lot more intensity a lot faster. And remember, with this deck, you need to run it up to 300 so that you can be generating all of those Power Gem 4s very quickly. But this has that same skill as the event card. And I was thinking that it's kind of underwhelming. And then I saw this video that Network posted, and I'm going to play a part of it so that I can talk kind of over it to explain what I saw going on. So my expectation for this video, or this skill, is that you do attack damage, and then you store up the attack damage, and then you do it again to all of the you do it again to the boss. So in this best deck, they have 2 ultra rares there on the left, the X13, the event card, and the support card. And so in the first turn, all their relics are firing up, and they're going to do a bunch of damage. And you'll notice that the pink Mohawk person, 4th card over, does 16.8 million. So that 16.8 is stored up. Then they take a turn where they're not doing any damage because they don't want to store up with a half attack. They want to get a huge screen full of purple gems and tons of power gems. And so then they do a huge attack. And this one's going to do for purple Mohawk pink Mohawk card. The 4th one over does 3.9 billion. So they've done 3.9 billion plus 17 million. So that basically is equal to 3.9 billion. Then there's another one where they wish they hadn't gotten this match. So they could have done another big attack, but they got a partial one, as they do another 27 million. So at this point in time, this deck has done, this pink Mohawk guy you can see there with the 27.4 on them has done a bit less than 4 billion in damage. So I was expecting that next turn, when they fire off this skill, it would do about 4 billion in damage, because it's done 3.9 billion so far. That's what's been stored. Then when you attack with that, you should do that kind of damage. But let's see what actually happens when they actually use it. For some reason, they do this random turn in the middle where they just waste all of those attack boosts. I'm not sure why. And then they fire off these skills. And let's see if we can get this to pause in the right place so we can see what the damage that's done by that is. That's hard to see. I didn't do a very good job of that. Anyway, it does 39 billion in damage. So instead of doing what I was expecting it to be, which would be 3.9, it actually does 39 billion in damage. So that attack did 39 billion in damage. We're expecting it to do 3.9 billion because that's what had been stored up. When we go and look at this card, this Engineering Zenka, the pink Mohawk chick, it says every time this hero does damage, store 100% of the damage done. So the 100% of the damage over the 3 attacks was 3.9 billion. And then unleash the Sure Sight, dealing all the stored damage. So there was 3.9 billion stored. And then when it unleashed the damage, it did 39 billion, which is 10 times the stored damage. The same was true of the X13, which stores 150% of damage dealt. So the 150% of the damage that was dealt by that X13 was about 6.2 billion. But when they actually used the skill, it did 62 billion in damage. So it's actually doing 10 times the stored damage. That's a huge difference, right? That's the difference between doing a nuke of 4 billion and doing a nuke of 40 billion. That goes from being a okay skill to being like pretty good. So given the way it's written, I wasn't sure that it was so good. Given the way that it actually behaves, it seems to be quite good to be able to do a huge 60 billion nuke attack on turn 5. So with that in mind, and that change to this skill, My recommended event deck, if I was building my perfect deck, I would want 3 ultra rares at least, maybe 4. 1 support card and 1 X13, I think. 3 ultra rares, 1 event card, or 1 support card, and the X13, I think would be my ideal deck. Potentially 3 ultra rares and 2 support cards, or 4 ultra rares and 1 support card would actually be a really, really good deck too. But given that you have this potential for this huge nuke because of the 10 times the stored damage, that might be a really, really good card to have in the deck, especially because it allows you to build up intensity faster because of the leader skill of the X13 that allows you to build up intensity faster. So 3 ultra rares, 1 support card, 1 X13, or if you only have 2 ultra rares, then 2 ultra rares, 2 support cards, and 1 X13 would be a pretty darn good deck. Now, again, a good deck for Commander, not a fast deck for Slayer, would also be probably a really good deck for the Legend Trials when you have to do trillion damage, because you have 60 seconds there, and that timer is going to allow you to build up the intensity that you need, and then every turn you can be launching off a huge attack, and then every third turn, if you dump in that big nuke, this could be a really good deck for taking out the Legend Trials. As far as the changes in this Crusade event goes, they haven't made very many changes. The only meaningful change that they made is that they're now allowing people to choose which Crusade map you want to do. So now allows you to choose which map. So there's the easy, medium, and hard. Usually it forces you to start on easy, and you have to wander your way, slog your way through that. Now it's letting you start at the hard, which could be good for using your keys early to build up keys so you can fight the bosses. But hopefully they let you go back and do the easy one, because that is the one that has the event catalyst shards in it as rewards. And so people probably want to go back and complete that map anyway, even though you're allowed to skip over to the beginning. So you can skip over to the beginning and power through the harder map to get more keys. But then you'll probably, once you've settled on keys, want to go back and get those event catalyst shards. That's the only real meaningful change. They changed the overkill objectives from level 250 to level 296. For a lot of people, that doesn't matter. For the people who've got the big, huge nuke decks, that can be, you can get a bunch more points along the way, or you can get up to level 300 boss quicker. But that's really for kind of elite players. If you have decks like I have, the overkill objectives aren't really on the table that much. So those are the only real changes of the week. Chromatic bosses are back, but they haven't changed at all. So hopefully you have some fun plotting through this event this weekend, and chance to try out this interesting new deck. We'll see if they change the description before the event starts, or change the card like they did last event. But hopefully you have fun this weekend. Until next time.